Hey everybody, what's going on? Xlex here. I've got another Master Duel video for you all. So today we're coming back to Spright once again for our Season 18 deck profile. And though the new season is upon us, the new ban list is not quite just yet. Despite that, I am going to be testing a post-ban list build for Spright, as well as a couple of other decks here this week. Again, as we just wait for the new ban list and selection pack to release later this week. At the time I'm recording this anyway. So, Spright, as you can see, we are only playing 2 Spright Blue, even though, again, the card is technically still at 3 right now. Again, just doing some testing for some post-ban list builds here. This build in particular has not changed too much. This is definitely one of the decks that does change, but changes kind of the least in some ways, in terms of deck building anyway. Losing a Spright Blue is obviously a pretty huge consistency hit to any deck that's playing a Spright engine, but that definitely does not exclude Pure Spright as well, although to be fair, Pure Spright does tend to feel it a little bit less than decks that use Spright as an engine, just because this deck still has the ability to spit out the Spright core pretty consistently, just by getting 2 level 2 monsters on the field and then making Gigatic Spright. Whereas other decks, you might not want to be too locked so early, and therefore are more reliant on actually drawing the Spright Blue there. So, Pure Sprites doesn't suffer too much from the overall loss of one Spright Blue. I had talked about this a little bit in other videos, but to me it's pretty comparable to when Aliberg went to 2. And, you know, Brand Despia, like, yeah, it was a little bit less consistent, but it didn't really get worse after that. And I suspect the same is going to be true of Pure Spright as well. Both decks, but especially Spright, like I mentioned before, have a lot of ability to search out Spright Blue with Gigantic, so it's never too difficult to find this card if you need it in this particular build. This particular build as well also has a lot of disruption tools. It's funny, this deck, a lot of the time when you're playing it, actually ends up feeling almost like a control deck, just because we have so many different ways to kind of like halt our opponent's progress. Like, we're playing so many different cards. Like, we have the Dimension Shifters, we have the Melffy package for Herald of the Arclight on the opponent's turn, we have 3 Triple Tactics talents, and then we of course have the usual suite of Maxx, Ash Blossoms, Imperms. We have a Smashers, of course, because we're a more dedicated Spright deck, as opposed to, again, just using a Spright engine. I'm also playing Gamma Burst, which is a card I've not played in the past, but definitely seems pretty good in this particular format. I see just about every single Spright deck that's doing well right now is playing Gamma Burst, and it makes sense. When the opponent is vomiting out huge boards on their turn and on our turn as well, and by the opponent, of course, I mean Tearlaments, having a way to just brute force your way over that board a lot of the time is what you need, and of course it's also great for just getting an OTK in as well. If you've got like 4 Spright monsters on the field, you can pretty much, which, you know, sounds like a lot, but it's not really a big ask at all, and your opponent's got a clear board, you can pretty much just use Gamma Burst to go ahead and OTK. Speaking of OTKing, we are also playing Daigusto Phoenix. This is pardon me. Excuse me. This is a card that I don't see a lot of Spright builds playing. I never have, but I don't really get it. Like, I think this card is like leagues better than Cat Shark. It allows you to OTK just like Cat Shark does, but it allows you to do so through a variety of situations. Cat Shark is really only good for OTKing when you have a clear board, and like Gamma Burst already does that. Whereas Daigusto Phoenix can help you OTK through a board with monsters on it, not only in combination with Gamma Burst, where Phoenix becomes a 2900 attack monster that can attack twice, but also with the help of Spright Pixies. Spright Pixies, you can battle Daigusto Phoenix into a big monster, use Pixies to battle over it, deal 1500, and then you get a second attack with your boosted Daigusto Phoenix as well. So that, in combination with, of course, your ability to swarm with other level, rank, or Link 2 monsters, makes Daigusto Phoenix, I think, still my favorite way to OTK here in Sprights. And you can even OTK without having to boost it at all. I believe we have a game that we're going to show here where we do that. We have a couple of different OTK games we're going to show here. What else is there? Oh, the Melffy package. Yep, so Melffy Catty and Penny. I wasn't always playing Merry Melffys, but I am now. Although normally we do just go for the Herald of the Arclight, I think the ability to make a monster that can just bounce an opponent's card is still pretty valuable as well. Also playing Melffy of the Forest, but this is here just to mostly search out the Catty during your first turn. You know, you make the Melffy of the Forest with 2 of your spare level 2 monsters, and then grab the Catty, summon Catty during your end phase, and then pretty much as soon as your opponent summons a monster, you can bounce Catty, search Penny. Penny effect to sink into, again, whichever level 4 synchros you need. I'm very satisfied with this little Melffy package in Sprite. I think it's definitely the optimal way to play the deck. Same with Dimension Shifters, we still have those as well. Dimension Shifter is still very, very good. Obviously, Tearlaments is still the best deck, but in general, there are still a lot of graveyard-based decks running around, even without the AA-ZEUS, and you know, this deck is more than capable of playing under Shifter. I've seen some people play Dimensional Fissure. I think that might have been right last format, but in this upcoming one, I don't know. It's like, again, Tear is still the best deck, but like, I guess the issues I have with Dimensional Fissure are kind of similar to the issues that I end up having with going second cards, and that Dimensional Fissure is not a going second card, but it is a pretty strictly going first card. Even if you're playing its Tearlaments and you open with Dimensional Fissure, if you're going second and they have an opportunity to set up like a whole big board, yeah, the Dimensional Fissure will still shut down some of their plays, but it becomes a lot more difficult for that card to have any like meaningful impact on the game when your opponent has already set up not only their board but their graveyard as well. Also there's the whole matter of space. To be fair, there is quite a bit of room in this particular deck. I noticed that as I was building it, I was like, wow, I feel like I could take out, like, I think I added Prosperity, which I don't normally play in Sprites, just because I had like the extra space, and I guess I could have filled it, well, I was going to say with Crossout Designator, but I totally forgot we're actually already playing that. So yeah, it's not like the main deck lacks room. I just, again, cards, be it going first or second, cards that are really only specifically good when going first or second, not my cup of tea. You could argue that's the case with Dimension Shifter, that this is pretty much a going second card, and it mostly is, but it can still be played in a way where you can utilize it going first. Yeah, I don't know. It's close. Like I'll say even Dimension Shifter is a little bit closer to not making the cut, but I still think it's like, again, we had the room, and I think it's a valuable tool, so I decided to just go ahead and keep it in. All right, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to mention. As far as the build itself, it's pretty standard for the most part, honestly. There's not anything like too wild we're doing here. But I think, you know, as always, that's like how I usually like to build my decks, and I think if you want to see consistently good results, that tends to be the best way to build. But let's go ahead and break this deck down card by card, and then we're going to take a look at some gameplay. So we're on 3 Swap Frog, 1 Ronintoadin, 3 Maxx, 3 Nimble Beaver, 1 Melffy Catty, 2 Spright Blue, there we go, 3 Spright Jet, 1 Spright Pixies, 2 Spright Red, 1 Spright Carrot, 1 Melffy Pinny, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Dimension Shifter, 3 Triple Tactics Talent, 1 Pot of Prosperity, 2 Call by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 2 Spright Starter, 1 Spright Gamma Burst, 1 Spright Smashers, and then 3 Infinite Impermanence. That's our main deck. Now for the extra deck, we have 1 Herald of the Arclight, 1 Merry Melffys, 1 Daigusto Phoenix, 1 Melffy of the Forest, 1 Onibimaru Soul Sweeper, 2 Gigatic Spright, 1 Downerd Magician, 1 Divine Arsenal AA-ZEUS Sky Thunder, 1 IP Masquerena, 2 Spright Elf, 1 Knightmare Unicorn, 1 Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax, and then finally 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. So there's our list. Now let's look at some gameplay. Okay, our first game is going to be against branded Tearlaments. These duels were from right when the new season started, so we are now, I know because on my branded Despia profile I had games from the last season. Now we're officially into the new season with these games here. So first turn, looking really good here. I mean, I opened Swap Frog, Blue Jet, looking great. Opponent's got a Havenus, which could throw a wrench in our plans. I'm going to fire off a Maxx in response to the Havenus, just in case my opponent decides to summon, you know, a whole lot this turn. Then I can at least get a decent amount of draws in. But fortunately for me, they didn't really seem to mill anything of substance here. Also, I want to point something out real quick, because you probably noticed I milled Swap Frog with Swap Frog. That was not a misplay or a misclick. Well, it was actually a bit of both, just not within this game. This first duel was my first game with this deck, and I realized as soon as I summoned the Swap Frog that I had forgotten to put Ronintoadin in. So, this combo is actually not going to utilize Ronintoadin for that reason. But, of course, we're Ronintoadin in the deck like it should have been. We definitely would have sent that instead. But we can still make plays. We have a lot of plays, actually, because we have both Blue and Jet in our hand. I can summon both Grabbing Bread and Starter, throwing the red on the board for a little bit of extra protection as I overlay the blue and the jet into, of course, the Gigantic Spright. Now, even though I don't have Ronintoadin, I can still do some comboing with Swap Frog, pulling Maxx from my deck with Gigantic, and then bouncing it to my hand with the aforementioned Swap Frog. So, normally here I would have gotten to have Elf to bring back Swap. Well, I guess I will do that anyway, just to send my last copy. But again, ideally we'd have a Ronin in our graveyard. We could have so many more materials on our board right now, but I think this is still ultimately going to be fine. We're going to end on Elf, IP Masquerena, throw a Carrot in there, and then we get to special summon this Catty that's in our hand as well. Now, we do already have the Melffy Pinny, but Catty actually allows us to add any beast monster for our deck to our hand, so we're just going to end up grabbing Nimble Beaver instead. Opponent's going to Lava Golem us. It's an interesting tech for Tearlaments, but yeah, we're also going to fire off the Maxx during the draw phase there just to play around a potential triple attack. And as soon as my opponent summons a monster, I'm going to immediately activate not only the Catty to again get that search, but I have the Penny in hand to activate as well, and now I get a Herald of the Arclight. So, opponent's going to Branded Fusion, sending Merly and Albaz. Fortunately, the Merly will not trigger, but the Lubellion and that part of the engine still very much will. Here's Ash Blossom right on time to not stop the Branded Fusion, but that's fine. I'm going to chain IP Masquerena to Lubellion's effect here. Even though I'm not going to be able to negate either the Lubellion or the Mirror Jade, I can at the very least use my Knightmare Unicorn to get the Mirror Jade off of the board before it can, well, like, battle or really do anything in that regard. It will still get to use this effect, though, in response to Knightmare Unicorn's effect, which is a little bit annoying, but it's not the end of the world. We're just going to lose out on our Herald of the Arclight here, but our opponent is, I mean, they still have their normal summon, but they're still under Maxx. We still have Ash Blossom and potentially Imperm to use at some point as well if they clear the Unicorn, but they don't have the ability to. They're just going to ultimately end up passing. Looks like they're trying to fire off Albion during the end phase, but I'm just going to throw out the Ash Blossom, and yeah, we're looking pretty good here. We've got the Nimble Beaver to continue comboing, thanks again to Melffy Catty there, and we even drew another Ash Blossom in case our opponent's going to throw down a Maxx or something here, but doesn't seem to have anything of the sort. 2 level 2 monsters in this situation is definitely, in combination with the Knightmare Unicorn, definitely enough to find an OTK here. Gonna link off the Beavers for a Spright Elf. Elf gets to bring back Blue. Blue's going to summon Jet. Jet for Gamma Burst this time. That's the other nice thing about Gamma Burst, is not only does it help you OTK, but it's also very easily searchable. I guess Pixies is the same way as well, but yeah, Gigantic Sprite's coming down with 3200 attack. Going to pull more Spright monsters out of my deck. At this point, though, the opponent just surrenders as they realize, you know, because I've already searched Gamma Burst, that I can very easily find lethal here. So that's going to go ahead and do it for our first game, but of course we have a few more. These tools will have Ronintoadin in the deck, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So here we're going to be up against yet another branded tier limit deck. I guess the branded support is just getting generally more popular as it, you know, it's got new support coming on the horizon. I guess a lot of people are just testing / getting reacclimated with branded before they start playing the new variant there. So opponent's going to start off with a Foolish Burial Goods. I get to chain Dimension Shifter directly in response to it. I mentioned this before, like, again, Dimension Shifter is pretty much a going second card, but despite that, it's just so powerful in this meta in particular that I think it's still worth running, although it becomes a lot more borderline, I guess, as Tearlaments continue to get hit more and more, and the AA-ZEUS, of course, as well. So I'm going to start by normally Maxx and then especially Spright Jet. Opponent's got an Imperm for the Jet, but that doesn't matter. At this point, I already have 2 level 2 monsters on the board, so aside from just having plays in general, it shouldn't be too hard for me to find lethal here, especially given that I already have Gamma Burst. In fact, all I really need to do is summon this Carrot and then move to battle phase, which is exactly what I'm doing, and then yeah, here goes the Gamma Burst. So this duel is going to be a very quick one, as you can see, but I just wanted to show the power of both ends of the Spright deck as they're really coming out in this game here. Spright, of course, has the ability to combo off on turn 1, but I think what this particular iteration of the pure Spright build can do rather uniquely is what you saw just here. Because we have so many open slots to fit in disruption like Dimension Shifter, like Triple Tack, and of course, you know, Ash Blossom, Maxx, Imperm, all that fun stuff as well. This deck also has room if you wanted to play stuff like Droplet. I could see playing Droplet here. There's so much unique disruption that you can play in this deck that it really doesn't even become an issue going second. This feels a lot like Tri-Brigade did in a lot of ways. with its ability to utilize like one, maybe occasionally two card combos. Well, I guess with Spright, it's either starter or, you know, Spright Blue plus, you know what I mean. Anyway, by utilizing one or two card combos, it can save the rest of its resources for, well, disruption. And so you have scenarios here where even though we didn't go first and set up like a super extravagant board, it wasn't hard for us to just win super easily anyway because of one, Dimension Shifter, the ability to disrupt the opponent badly enough to stop them from doing anything, and then two, the Gamma Burst follow-up, which could have also been just 2 level 2 monsters going into Daigusto Phoenix, as well as other stuff. Just the ability to OTK very easily after disrupting the opponent, stopping them from doing anything on turn 1, shows that I think pure Spright, if you're especially looking for a deck that's like very powerful, regardless if you go first or second, this is definitely the deck, and I think this game is an excellent example of that. But we have some more duels to show, of course, so let's go straight to the next one here. So this game is going to be against Witchcrafters, which is definitely not a deck that I've played against often or recently, but still, you know, I'm vaguely familiar enough with the strategy of, you know, they want a bunch of spells in the grave to recycle them. So even though we're going second, we have, again, open Dimension Shifter. I will say I get pretty lucky with this card when I play Sprites. I feel like it's glued to my hand. One thing to note in particular, and one thing I'm always a little tempted to do, right, is much like Maxx, I always want to throw out Dimension Shifter like right away at the start of my opponent's turn, but unlike Maxx, I think this is much more important to chain it to something in particular, right? Because that way you get your opponent to waste like resources. Like here, I could have made it so they couldn't summon Magician Souls like at all if I had preemptively used the Dimension Shifter, but here I get them to commit some of their resources, and I get to chain Maxx the Shifter as well to get a draw here, although the opponent's going to use Ash Blossom, but that's completely fine with me. But my main point is, I have committed my opponent, or I forced my opponent to commit to use some of their resources, only for them to now find out that their stuff's going to get banished for the whole turn, which is going to make playing this turn a lot more difficult. Especially given that I'm going to just Ash Blossom this Witchcrafter creation, which I don't know a whole lot about Witchcrafters, but I'm assuming could have bailed them out to at least some degree. Okay, they do get to bring back their Heine, but they're going to immediately Hain. I never know how to pronounce that card's name. But it looks like we're immediately going to leak it off for Ver Anaconda. Oh, this does actually end up being a misplay on my opponent's part, though. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe this last card in hand wasn't a spell. I was going to say they could have used Hein's Effect, Hain, again, however you pronounce their name. They could have potentially used this on my turn if this last card was a spell. Ver Anaconda actually doesn't do anything here, though, because if you read the effect of Ver Anaconda, it says you can pay 2,000 life points and send one fusion or polymerization monster from your deck to the graveyard, semicolon. That means all of this, paying 2,000 life points and also sending a card from your deck to the graveyard, is part of the condition to activate the effect. But because I played Dimension Shifter, my opponent can't send a card to the graveyard. It would get banished instead. So my opponent is actually not even able to activate Ver Anaconda's effect. And as you can see, I just had to pass back to me after summoning it. So that's definitely brutal. Yeah, there's just not too much of a chance of my opponent being able to come back after that. Now, to be fair, with a hand of just Jet and Gamma Burst, things were not looking super great, but I wasn't worried because I knew I could top literally any level 2 monster in my deck, even something as random as Melffy Pinny, and that's enough to make plays. I can just normal summon that, especially some of the Spright Jet, and then my opponent concedes because, I mean, it's pretty obvious where things go from here, right? Jet grabs Starter, Starter grabs Blue, Blue grabs Red, we link into, we're not under, no, we are still under Dimension Shifter, so we'd have to overlay into Gigantic. I think I could have, I'm trying to think if I could have found lethal. Well, I have Gamma Burst in hand, so of course I had lethal. I actually totally forgot about that, but even without Gamma Burst, I think we could have gotten creative and found lethal there. But again, just shows the power of Gamma Burst, like just the ability to like close out games super easily with no effort at all. Very, very good. We do have one more duel to take a look at, so let's go straight into it. All right, so our final game is going to be against Eldritch. It's a very interesting Eldritch build. It's a 60 card deck, and it seems to be utilizing some sort of like a draw engine. Like I saw slash draws. Well, in any case, we're going to go second, and we actually didn't open Dimension Shifter for once. Not only that, but our draw phase Maxx is actually going to be hit by a call by here, so Definitely not as, we're not going to coast quite as easily as we did those last 2 games here. Opponent's going to start with Unizombie. I'm assuming this is ultimately to send Eldritch to the graveyard, but I'm just going to go ahead and Ash Blossom it. Just kind of like nip it in the bud right there. So even though we didn't have Dimension Shifter, we still had plenty of disruption here. But the opponent's got some more plays as well. They're going to summon Jacobalon by sending the Glow Bloom, using that to add Algol Mazira before sinking the 2. I thought they were going to Baron, but it actually ends up being Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord, which is kind of confusing because, you know, it's funny. As soon as I summoned this, I started reading Jacobalon. I was like, wait, what does this do? But the only quick effect it has is just to summon more stuff from the graveyard. But I don't know. I guess I don't really understand why my opponent went for this over something like Baron, which actually would have done a pretty decent job of disrupting me here. But with just Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord with nothing apparently threatening to bring back, that's completely fine. So draw for turn. Melffy Pinny, definitely not the best draw in the world, but not the worst one either. What I'm going to do is I'm going to normal summon Penny, and then my opponent's going to bring back my Ash Blossom. That's completely fine. Specialing Jet to get starter. But now before I commit to more Sprite plays, I'm actually going to go ahead and Synchro Summon, using the Penny and the Jet to go for Merry Melffys. I'm just going to use this as a pretty easy way to get rid of the Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord. And now I think I should have plenty of ways to find lethal to OTK here. What I'm thinking of doing in particular is ultimately going for the 3200 Gigantic, then an Onibimaru Soul Sweeper to remove the Ash Blossom, then Daigusto Phoenix to attack for game. I actually could have, if I had bounced the Ash Blossom back to my hand and left the Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord on the field, I could have used this Gigantic to grab a Pixies, and then I could have OTK'd that way. Yeah, now you can see we have Ronin in the deck again. So I actually had multiple options to OTK here. I could have also grabbed it. Well, no, because I needed the starter to grab blue and make those plays. So I couldn't have grabbed Gamer Burst at any point. But yeah, it actually would have been better, I think, to bounce the Ash Blossom back to my own hand. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We're going to find lethal no matter what here. Like I said, this deck actually just has a ton of ways to find lethal. It's kind of wild, honestly. Yep, Daigusto Phoenix allowing itself to attack twice. Now we smack with 3200 Gigantic, 1900 Onibimaru, plus 3000 from Daigusto Phoenix is 8100 points of damage. That is going to be enough to secure the duel there. So, yet again, another instance where we're able to use our plethora of disruption tools to stop our opponent and then crack them back with an OTK on the follow-up turn. And again, we had multiple options to find lethal there, actually. So, a lot of ways we could have done it, but that's what I really like about this deck in general. So yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There, for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation. You do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.